No worries. Thank you very much. Hopefully this presentation will take you through that and give you a bit of an insight into how we're working with creators in London. I hope I know how to work this thing, but here we go. Yes, we do. So influence marketing is growing faster than ever before. I know you guys probably all see that in your markets with the clients you're working with. There's more money in the industry now more than ever. More money equals more influencers, and more influencers equals a host of challenges. The only constant thing in influencer marketing right now is change. It's changing all the time. It's changing very quickly. So brands want reassurance and security when they're working with agencies and influencers. They want to be secure. They want to know that their brand is safe. They want to know that they're protected. While talent want a lot more from their partnerships with brands. So we're seeing away from just kind of normal online Instagram, TikTok content, influencers now becoming creative directors. They're now on TV. They're growing a lot faster than they were before, and they're seen now in wider spaces. They're coming more into the mainstream audience as well. And on top of that, audiences are becoming a lot more savvy to the content that they're consuming. We, as consumers, as marketers, as brands, we spend a lot of time on our phones. We know when an advert is authentic. We know when one is fake. I'm not going to name any names, Kim Kardashian. But we now know and we understand what we see and how we're consuming influencers' content and how important it is for us when we're making decisions on purchases, on looking at brands as well. So we're a lot cleverer and smarter than we were before. So just a few stats for you guys to ponder and take a look at. So 87% of people have said that they are inspired to make a purchase decision from influencer recommendations. 92% of people said that they trust influencers, and audiences trust recommendations from influencers over brand. I think some of the presentations earlier alluded as to why they do that. And there's also 8 times more ROI generated by influence campaigns compared to some other forms of media as well. We also know that influencer ads, there was a study done by Whaler, and they tested people's brains and how they reacted to a TV advert versus an influencer advert. So the TV advert is the one in the blue, the influencer advert is the one in the red. So when people looked at a TV advert, their brain didn't really do much. I'm not saying that they didn't do much, but their brain didn't really react. When they looked at an influencer advert, you can see it's all very red. The brain had more emotional intensity when looking at influencer content. Now, I'll caveat that with that emotional intensity, which is in the red, was actually bad emotional intensity. But it shows that influencer content makes your brain react a lot more. So imagine if you created good influencer content, it might be a lot more. I don't know who they're looking at, maybe Kim Kardashian again, but we'll see. So this is why it's really important to ensure that your influencer strategy is creative in the right way. Hopefully you can get people's brains reacting in a really positive way. So the must-haves for a creative influencer strategy. So you need to define the role for influencers to play and build an inclusive creative around that role. What I mean by inclusive, it means that you're inclusive for race, gender, disability, sexuality, and everything in between and around that. Influencer content needs to include everyone, and the creators that you work with need to feel included as well. So that creative really needs to make sure that it passes all of those tests. You need to brainstorm the idea. So creative workshops with the brand and the agency are key. It's all well and good sending over emails and questions via email. You really need to get into the room. I know we're now working from home a lot more and we're doing a lot more video calls, but it's really important to get together and make sure your minds are all in the same space and you're really hashing out exactly what you want to achieve with your influencer marketing campaign. Which audiences do you want to reach? What kind of creative you might want to do. You want to leave those sessions not just talking about KPIs, not just talking about, oh, we want to reach 2 million people. We want to leave those sessions giving the brand, giving the influencer something really creative and inspiring to go away with and have a think about. We want to inspire the brand, as I said, and we want to excite the influencers. So one thing we've been doing in London quite a lot is we bring influencers into the process really early. We'll get them into the room, we'll brainstorm with the influencer, with the brand, we get them all together. They understand Not only do they understand their audience, they also understand online audience. They've got friends who are influencers. They know what's going on. They also might be part of like a specific passion point or subsect area. The lady's presentation earlier said, get away from your computers, get outside. Go and understand what's going on outside. So go and speak to people like these influencers, understand what's going on in their community, in their passion point. And number 4 is you want to ensure that the brand, the influencer, and the audience will all benefit from the creative. So it's almost like a triangle. If there's a break in the triangle, it means that someone is not benefiting from what you guys have come up with, what idea you've come up with. The brand needs to make sure that they're benefiting from working with the influencer. The influencer needs to make sure that they are benefiting as well, whether that's not just compensatory with money, but also benefiting more holistically by working with this brand. They then get recognition for working with a prestigious brand. You also need to make sure the audience are benefiting. What is the content the influencer might create? How will the audience benefit from that? As long as you've got this triangle in place with no breaks, you should come out with really strong creative campaign for audiences, brands, and influencers as well. Once you've done all of that, you now need to go into the actual campaign. Now, managing a campaign is not easy, but if you've got your creative and you've sorted everything out in that first stage, it should be a lot easier when you start to work with influencers and getting them to understand what you want to achieve when you're working on the campaign. However, it's not always that simple, as the other marketers in here will all know. Working with influencers, sometimes it's not easy. It can be very challenging. It's a challenging place. Influencers are new to the industry. They may not have worked with brands much. Their agent might be very new. The industry is growing so fast that there's a lot of things in place where things can become challenging. But it's also important to remember that agents and influencers are under the same pressure as us as marketers. So I think the big thing about influencer marketing is it's people. We're dealing with people, and we need to know that people, they're stressed. They might not have other campaigns going on. The influencer might be busy. The influencer might not do this full time. They might have a job. They might have children. There's lots of things to consider when you're working with influencers that you really need to make sure that you're building it into your plans with them. So, for example, if they've got children, the weekend might be the only time that they can create content. If you as a marketer say, oh, I need your content on Tuesday and it's Monday, it's very unlikely that you're going to get that. You're going to stress yourself out, you're going to stress the influencer out, and you're not going to start building a good relationship with that person. You really need to understand the people that you're working with to make sure that you're getting the best content and the best work for the brand that is your client. So what can you do before the campaign starts to help that process? So there are 4 areas before a campaign starts that are critical to effective campaign management. Number 1 is outreach. Make sure that you've got a really solid outreach email. Understand your influencer fully. You know who they are, what they've been posting about for the last week. Deliverables, usage, exclusivity. Make sure those are all in there in that initial email, so you get all the hard questions are out of the way in that first email. Negotiations don't have to be tricky. You need to understand their rates and try to come to an agreement. You know your budget. Don't embarrass yourself with a lower offer. You need to value their time as a creator and as a person. And close the conversations regardless of the outcome. If you decide not to work with them, you may work with them again 6 months down the line. So make sure you close that conversation off. Thank you for your time. We might be in touch with you again in the future. Contracting. You really need to give real clear guidance on what is being contracted. Ensure that all deliverables are really clearly laid out so there's no miscommunication. I've seen times where small things are missed out from the contract, and then it leads to big things, big problems down the line. Make sure that everything is in there. Stipulate all timings, and that's not just campaign date. Include in your contract what the date is that you want the first draft of the content, what the date is that you might want the second draft of any changes. Get all of that into the contract so that everyone is very clear. Have a clear approval process as well, and strong contracting protects everyone. It protects you as an agency, it protects the brand, and it also protects the influencer as well. Briefing, something that I like to do is making sure that I get into the room with the influencer so that they really understand that brief. If you can't get in the room with the influencer, make sure that their agent really understands the brief and follow up in writing exactly what you've discussed so that the agent is clear in no uncertain terms what you expect. Ensure the brief is clear and the signposting to the key messages and any must-haves, but use that briefing call to allow the influencer's creative to come through. You may have an idea of what the brief may look like. They may have a better idea of what their audience will like from your creative. So really use that to be open with the influencer, and I think it's going back to the point the gentleman made earlier around co-creation. Co-creation is the most important part of influencer marketing. Agree on all those checkpoints on that call as well, which are in the contract. So what can you do during a campaign to ensure that an effective partnership is developed as well? Now, you want to make sure that the influencer is keeping to deadlines, so time management is key. You want to check in with the influencer agent just before the campaign is due to go live. Make sure that everything is clear and everyone's okay. Keep an eye on the content when it appears. So I'm not sure if in Romania there's hashtag ad or any regulatory things, but just make sure that when the content goes live, that you know it's gone live, you've checked, everything is clear. All of the legal issues are all taken care of, whether it's hashtag ad or sponsored, and make sure that you are keeping an eye on that as well. Also take a look at their engagement, capture anything interesting or negative. So interesting, it's always good to know what people are speaking about. You want to look at the sentiment of the content. If there's anything negative, then you as a brand need to you as an agency need to make sure the brand is aware and come up with a response for anything that may be negative. If there are multiple waves of content, check in before any agreed dates. Again, I think it's really clear that we really need to keep on top of the influencers. As we said, it might not be their first job. They might be very busy. Make sure that you're on top of them as well. And if you see something that you particularly like, let them know. Let their agent know. Be open with the influencers and their agents. You may have a second piece of content coming out later. If you really like something in the first piece of content, put in another call to figure out what the second content might look like later on down the line. It's really important to make sure that we're keeping conversations and dialogue open with influencers and their agents. So the campaign has now ended. Everything's gone fine, but what now? After a campaign, it is essential to keep the relationship going. I keep going back to this thing, relationship. Influencer marketing is almost like relationship marketing, whether that's the relationship the influencer has with their audience, or whether it's the relationship that you as a brand have with the influencer, or even the agency has with the influencer as well. By not interacting with the influencer or the agent after the campaign, you're treating it as a transactional campaign, almost as if you've gone to Lidl, you've bought something, and you've left the shop. That's not how we deal with influencers or influencer marketing. It's all around building relationships. Building relationship with influencers long-term is beneficial both for the brand and for you as an agency. It's important for the brand because they might have really enjoyed working with that influencer. The results might have been fantastic. So you want to make sure that throughout that process, whether there was stressful moments or whether there was really good moments, you've kept a very good relationship with that influencer because it will benefit the brand who is your client. As an agency, it's really important to keep relationship with influencers. You may be working with them on a number of different clients, but you can also bring them in. I've had workshops where I've brought in influencers to have a Q&A with my influencer team so that we can ask them any questions and just have a really open and honest discussion with the influencers to understand what's going on in their market. As an agency, you really need to make sure that you're bringing in these influencers, speaking with them regularly, even if it's that picking up the phone, going for a coffee with them, sending them a gift on their birthday. There's all these little things that you can do to make sure that you're building good relationships with influencers and their agents, and developing those relationships can unlock their influence in the future. Thank you very much. I hope that was insightful.